Imagine this. You've just written something really personal, maybe a poem, something you haven't shown anyone. Then later that day, some stranger walks up and recites it perfectly, word for word.
That would be unsettling, wouldn't it?
Totally mind-bending. And, well, stories like that actually surround Ibn al-Arabi. They really hint at, the mystical depth of his life and his work. Welcome to the deep dive. You're here to get the essential knowledge fast and thorough. And today we're diving into excerpts from The Bezels of Wisdom by this really pivotal figure in Islamic spirituality, in Sufism.
Indeed. The Bezels of Wisdom, or Fusa al-Hikam, it's a fascinating text.
Yeah.
And a challenge.
Right.
It's quite short, actually, but it packs in his main themes. So it's incredibly rich, but also, pretty complex. It needs a careful reading, an imaginative one, even.
Absolutely. So think of us as your guides today. Our mission isn't to unpack every single detail. That'd be a huge task. But we want to explore some key ideas from these excerpts, shed some light on his unique view of God, humanity, the cosmos. We'll be sticking close to the source material. Okay, so where do we start? How about how this book even came into existence?
The origin story. It's quite something in itself. Ibn al-Arabi says he received the book directly.
Directly.
Yes, from the Prophet Muhammad. In a vision. This was in Damascus back in 627 AH, so 1229 CE.
Wow, okay. And the text itself, it emphasizes that he felt compelled to transmit it exactly as he received it, right? Without any addition or subtraction.
Precisely. Which highlights just how significant he viewed this encounter. It really sets the tone for the whole work. Many consider it his masterpiece, maybe alongside the huge Meccan revelations.
So this visionary origin gives the book its authority, exploring the wisdom of different prophets.
Exactly. And that brings us quite naturally to a really central concept in all his thought, the oneness of being. What that al-wujud.
Okay, this is where it gets really fascinating, and maybe a bit tricky at first, but stick with us here. Our sources say, for him, the cosmos is not and cannot be other than God. But then, crucially, not that it is God or that God is the cosmos.
Right. That not other than is absolutely key. It's subtle.
So how do we wrap our heads around that? Any analogies?
Well, one way to think about it.
Oh.
Imagine maybe sunlight illuminating dust particles in a room. The particles become visible because of the light. They depend entirely on it.
Cool.
They aren't separate from the light's revealing power, but you wouldn't say the dust particles are the sun or the sun is the dust particles.
I see. The manifestation depends on the source, but isn't identical to it.
Something like that. The cosmos is a manifestation utterly dependent on the divine reality, but distinct in its manifested form.
The excerpts also mention this idea of an original polarization within the divine self. What's going on there?
It suggests the kind of dynamic tension within the Godhead itself, a sort of divine desire to be known, to manifest, to see itself as an object of knowledge. But at the same time, there's God's absolute transcendence, his unknowable essence. So it's this interplay between self-revelation, or theophany, and self-concealment, or self-reservation.
So if I'm following this, everything we experience, the whole created world, it's like the realization of potentials that were always there within God's consciousness.
Exactly. The excerpt calls them latent realities within divine consciousness, the inner object of self-knowledge. They're not created from nothing in the absolute sense, but brought forth from a potentiality into actuality.
Right.
And this process, this unfolding, is beautifully described as the breath of the merciful, nafas al-Rahman.
The breath of the merciful.
Yeah, the excerpt connects it to the chapter on Seth. It's seen as this outward projection driven by that divine desire for self-awareness we mentioned. It's the ultimate act of divine giving existence itself, as if the divine exhaled and the cosmos appeared.
That's a powerful image. Okay, let's shift focus a bit. From the cosmos to us, to humanity. Ibn al-Arabi gives humans a very special place, doesn't he?
He certainly does. Adam is presented as the archetype, the one who unites that polarity. We discuss the qualities of the cosmos and the reality.
So what's the unique role?
Humanity is seen as an isthmus, a barzak, a bridge, essentially.
A bridge.
Yes, created in the image of the reality. We serve to transmit the truth of the divine subject to the cosmos and simultaneously reflect the cosmic object back to the divine observer. It's this incredible reciprocal role.
Like a two-way mirror.
Kind of, allowing the divine to see itself reflected in creation through us and allowing creation to perceive the divine through us.
And there's this term, himma, creative power. How does that fit in?
Himma is this concentrated spiritual energy or imaginative power. Saints, through intense spiritual practice, faith, asceticism, self-denial, can cultivate this.
What does it let them do?
When fully realized, their hema aligns with the divine creative power itself. It allows them to, well, influence conditions within the cosmos, not like magic, but through the alignment of their purified will with the divine will.
Okay, so it's about deep inner alignment, not just wishing for things.
Precisely. It's about participating in the divine creativity through self-realization.
Now, he also talks about prophets and saints, prophethood and sainthood. How are they related in his view?
Well, it's quite structured. He says all prophets and apostles are saints. They have that closeness to God, that wilaya.
Right.
And all prophets are also apostles. They have a message, a law for a community. But crucially, not all saints are prophets. Prophethood involves receiving a specific divine legislation or news of the unseen and the duty to convey it.
So sainthood is maybe the broader category.
You could say that, yes. It's the foundation of closeness to God upon which prophethood and apostleship are built.
And then he makes this rather bold claim about himself, doesn't he? The seal of Mohammedan sainthood.
He does. It's a statement that's generated a lot of discussion over the centuries. It suggests he saw himself as representing the full realization or culmination of the spiritual inheritance stemming specifically from the Prophet Muhammad. It points to a kind of hierarchy and finality in spiritual understanding within that lineage.
Okay, let's switch gears slightly to knowledge. How we know things versus how God knows things. The excerpt makes a distinction.
Yes. God's knowledge is eternal, intrinsic. It doesn't depend on anything outside of God. It just is.
But our knowledge.
Our knowledge is contingent. It depends on the thing we're knowing. We know the tree because the tree exists. Our knowledge follows the object.
Right.
But, and this is a neat paradox he points out, our very dependence confirms God's independence. The fact that creation needs God proves that God doesn't need creation.
Ah, interesting. The reflection proves the source.
Exactly. And this relates to marifa, gnosis. Direct knowing.
It's more than just book learning, right?
Oh, much more. It's a deep experiential awareness, knowing your own true essence, your latent reality, and seeing its connection to the divine reality.
And the mirror analogy comes back here too.
Yes, it's a powerful one. When God reveals himself, the recipient is like someone looking in a mirror. You see your own form reflected. You don't see the substance of the mirror itself.
So you perceive the divine through the lens of your own being, your own capacities.
Precisely. You see God in the form of your own preparedness, your own essence, which means our understanding is always shaped by who we are.
Okay. And what about the divine names and attributes? They seem really central too.
Absolutely crucial. They are the ways the divine reality manifests, the infinite modalities of that relationship between God and cosmos.
It's like the merciful, the knowing, the powerful.
Yes. Think of them as infinite facets of the one reality. And created beings like us, we manifest these names. We are the places where these attributes become visible.
We embody those qualities.
We embody them. And the excerpt makes a really deep point here. The essence itself, the dat, is beyond all these names, beyond all relations. It's only known as God or divine through us.
Wait, say that again.
It says, it is we in our eternal latency who make him a divinity by being that through which he knows himself as divine. It implies this incredible interdependence.
So our potential existence is what allows the absolute to be known as God.
In a sense, it connects directly to that famous saying, who knows his true self knows his Lord. Self-knowledge and God-knowledge are inseparable.
Wow. That's a lot to chew on.
It really is.
Okay, let's move to the straight path. Sirat al-Mustaqim. Usually we think of that as, the path to heaven, doing good deeds.
And it includes that, but for Ibn al-Arabi, it's much more fundamental. He discusses it in the chapter on HUD. It actually embodies the essential structure of reality itself, that mutuality within the oneness.
How so?
Everything other than the absolute reality is seen as being on this path, inherently. Moving according to God's determination, it is the relationship between the dependent and the independent.
So it's not just a path to God, it's the path of reality itself.
In essence, yes. Which leads to some startling statements like, if the creature submits to you, it is in truth the reality who submits. It radically underscores that underlying unity.
Even our bodies reflect this.
Yes, he suggests each limb, each faculty has its own way of knowing, its own path, but all stemming from the one source, the one reality.
Amazing.
Okay.
Okay, the Gnostic's heart. The excerpt mentions Abu Yazid al-Bistami.
Ah, yes, the famous Sufi saint. Abu Yazid reportedly said something like, if God's throne and everything it contains were placed in a corner of the Gnostic's heart, the Gnostic wouldn't even notice it.
Which sounds like hyperbole, but what's the point?
It's illustrating the immense vastness, the infinite capacity of a heart that has realized its connection to the absolute. It contains, in a sense, everything, because it reflects the source of everything.
And there's another analogy from Al-Junaid.
Yes, quoted in the Muhammad chapter, the water takes on the color of its container. The heart perceives the reality according to its own state, its own beliefs, its own capacity, because the reality becomes the very content of that heart's awareness.
So God meets you where you are, in the shape of your own heart's understanding.
That's a good way to put it. The reality conforms to the capacity of the receiver.
Let's touch on mercy. The chapter on Solomon mentions two kinds.
Yes, it distinguishes between a mercy of obligation, which seems tied to specific conditions, perhaps divine justice or law, sort of bound or restricted, and a mercy of giving.
And the mercy of giving is.
That's the boundless, unconditional mercy, the free gift. It quotes the Quranic verse, "My mercy encompasses everything." That speaks to this ultimate, all-embracing generosity of the divine.
And there's a mention of wish versus will, using Moses and Pharaoh.
Right. It touches on that complex theological point, the difference between what God might wish or prefer, like Pharaoh believing, and what God ultimately wills or decrees to happen, Pharaoh's disbelief and its consequences. It highlights the intricacies of divine determination and creaturely response.
Okay. And naturally, the Prophet Muhammad has a very special place.
Absolutely central. For Ibn al-Arabi, he's the most perfect manifestation of the reality in creation. The seal of the prophets, yes, but also the one with whom creation, in a spiritual sense, begins and ends.
Begins and ends.
There's the saying that he was a prophet when Adam was still between water and clay, pointing to his primordial reality. He represents the archetype of the perfect human, al-insan al-kamil.
And that saying about women, perfume, and prayer being made beloved to him, it's not just a list of likes, is it?
No, Ibn al-Arabi interprets it symbolically. He sees a triplicity there, woman representing the receptive cosmic pole, perfume, the subtle, diffusive divine connection, prayer, the direct encounter. It reflects the whole God-cosmos dynamic in a single human experience.
Triplicity and singularity. Wow.
Exactly. It shows how Muhammad embodies the synthesis of all realities.
Finally, this idea of continuous creation, it wasn't just a one-off event, was it?
Not at all. It's the concept of tajdid al-khalq, renewal of creation at every instant.
How does that work?
With every breath of the merciful, creation is annihilated and recreated. The moment of non-existence of a thing is the very same moment as the existence of its like. It's constant flux, constant dependence on the divine act of giving existence.
Like frames in a movie, appearing continuous but actually discrete moments.
That's a common analogy, yes. It emphasizes the absolute dynamism of reality and our utter dependence on God moment by moment.
So wrapping this up, even from just these few excerpts of the Bezels of Wisdom, we've touched on some incredibly profound ideas. This oneness of being, humanity is this crucial bridge, the link between knowing yourself and knowing God, this constant becoming of creation.
It's incredibly rich. And so we said it's not a text you just read through once. It demands engagement, contemplation.
It really feels like an invitation to a different way of seeing.
I think that's exactly right. It's meant to spark insight, to open up mystical understanding.
So here's something for you, the listener, to maybe reflect on. How might really taking in this idea that all is not other than the reality, how might that shift how you see the world around you, your everyday life, your interactions?
It's a perspective-altering thought.
Definitely. And if this has sparked your interest, we absolutely encourage you to explore more of Ibn al-Arabi's work and Sufism in general. There's always so much more to discover.
Always deeper levels.